Have you heard that cream puffs and éclairs are all the rage right now? The classic sweet treats, described by Larousse Gastronomique as small pastries made with pâte à choux, filled with cream and glazed with fondant, have taken the pastry world by storm in the recent years, starting of course in Paris. Many trace the choux' triumphant revival to French pastry chef Christophe Adam, who worked for 15 years at Fauchon, the legendary Paris gourmet store, and then went on to open his own pastry shop dedicated to the éclair in 2012. He cleverly called his shop L'Éclair de Génie, or Stroke of Genius. A stroke of genius it was indeed, as Christophe Adam is now credited for reviving worldwide interest in a 160 years old classic French pastry. Today, there are shops dedicated to puff treats all over the world. While éclairs, cream puffs and other puff treats sure look impressive, the good news is that you don't have to hop on a plane to Paris or spend lots of money to enjoy them. They're totally doable at home. You simply need to learn one core technique, making pâte à choux. Mastering this single technique will allow you to create an array of sweet and savory treats, from éclairs to gougères. In this class, I will show you how to make pâte à choux, and then I'll show you how to turn this one dough into chouquettes, cream puffs, profiteroles, éclairs, and gougères, which are savory cheese puffs. Using the information provided in this class and the recipes linked to in the project section of the class, you'll quickly be on your way to create impressive, festive puff treats. This class is perfect for novice bakers who want to learn a new skill, as well as for experienced bakers who are looking for new ideas to impress their guests. Let's get baking! In this lesson, we're going to make a basic filling called crème pâtissière à la vanille, or vanilla cream. Once you master this recipe, you're going to be able to transform it into a variety of other delicious cream fillings, such as dark chocolate, maple, coffee, and butterscotch. You'll find a recipe for vanilla cream as well as the recipes for all the variations in the project section of the class. The reason why we're making the cream filling first is that it needs several hours to refrigerate and cool completely before you can use it. I like to make fillings in advance, that way I'm sure everything's cold and ready to go when I want to assemble my choux or éclairs. It's also great to break down the process so you have less things to do in a single day. Now let's make vanilla crème pâtissière. In the bowl of an electric mixer, beat together the sugar, flour, cornstarch, and egg yolks until the mixture is thick and pale yellow, about 2 minutes. In a medium saucepan, combine the milk and sugar and bring to a simmer. When the mixture simmers, remove it from the heat. Ladle about 1 cup of the milk mixture into a glass measuring cup. Gradually pour the hot milk mixture into the egg mixture, mixing on low speed or stirring to combine. This will temper the egg mixture, ensuring it will not curdle when you pour it back into the saucepan. Scrape the tempered egg mixture into the saucepan, whisking constantly. Put the saucepan back onto medium-low heat and cook, never stopping whisking and scraping the bottom and corners of the pan to prevent the mixture from sticking or scorching. Keep on whisking until the mixture thickens and begins to bubble. Pay very close attention now because the thickening tends to happen quite quickly. Lift your attention just for a moment and your pastry cream could curdle or burn. You will probably feel thickening happening suddenly in one corner of the pan. Once you do, to keep better control over the process, lift the pan from the heat and whisk vigorously off the heat to allow the cream to cook evenly. Put it back on the heat and keep on cooking, whisking constantly until the custard is thick like pudding. Pour the custard into a shallow bowl or container and push a piece of plastic wrap right onto the surface to prevent the skin from forming. Refrigerate to cool the cream completely. Now we'll get to the heart of the project, making pâte à choux. This is the most technical part of this class, but the good news is that making pâte à choux really isn't that complicated. Plus, choux pastry is an extremely versatile base. Once you master it, you can use it to create all of the treats included in this class, including chouquettes, cream puffs, profiteroles, éclairs, and yes, even savory gougères. Let's get started. In a large saucepan, combine the water, milk, butter, and salt. Bring to a boil over medium heat. When the mixture is boiling, add the flour all at once and stir vigorously with a wooden spoon until the mixture pulls away from the sides of the pan. Continue to cook and stir the mixture for about a minute in order to eliminate excess moisture. Depending on whether you use an aluminum or a non-stick pan, a thin layer of dough may stick to the bottom of the pan, but it's no worry. Take the dough off the heat. At this point, the dough mostly comes together and rolls away from the sides of the pan when stirred. Transfer to the bowl of an electric mixer and let cool for 5 minutes, stirring occasionally to allow the steam to come out. Set the mixer to medium speed and beat the eggs in one at a time, making sure each egg is well incorporated before adding the next. Also, scrape the bowl down between each egg addition. Every time you add an egg, the dough will separate and look somewhat like a curdled mess, but it will then come back together in a really sticky yet somewhat crumbly way. The dough will keep on improving and getting smoother as you add more eggs. The dough is done when it is smooth and elastic and not dry. It will be very thick and sticky. You can refrigerate pâte à choux in an airtight container for up to a half day. I prefer transferring the prepared pâte à choux straight into a pastry bag fitted with a pastry tip that corresponds with what I'm planning to make. I'll talk more about pastry tips in following lessons, but for now, just know that I fitted my bag with a round pastry tip with a 1/2-inch opening. If you store the pâte à choux in the fridge, know that you don't need to bring it back to room temperature before shaping. The dough will be a bit stiffer, but you can get to work right away. The first thing we'll be making with pâte à choux is classic cream puffs. They're quite the iconic treat, and with good reason. They're really cute, really delicious, bite-sized treats. They're versatile too. You can fill them with an array of flavored creams. You can also turn them into profiteroles by foregoing crème pâtissière and filling them with ice cream or gelato instead, and serving them with chocolate sauce. If you're feeling really ambitious, you can even assemble them into a tall cone to turn them into a spectacular dessert, the croque-en-bouche. To form cream puffs, you can use a pastry bag fitted with a round pastry tip with a 1/4-inch to a 1/2-inch opening, but my favorite way to do it is to use a small ice cream scoop. Not only does the ice cream scoop make the process easier and faster, but I just love how it creates perfectly round, identical puffs. I'll demonstrate both options to you. Cover a baking sheet with parchment paper and slip templates under if you want to use them as a guide. If you want to use a pastry bag, fit it with a round pastry tip with a 1/4-inch opening. Fold the top 3 inches of the pastry bag down over itself like a cuff. Using a rubber spatula, scoop and push the pâte à choux into the bag, filling it no more than 2/3 full. Unfold the cuff and squeeze the bag to push the pâte à choux toward the tip. Twist the top part of the bag and push the paste down into the tip. Use damp fingertips to press down peaks of dough that are sticking out. Pipe out mounds of dough about the size of a ping pong ball, spacing them about 3 inches apart. Slide the templates off the baking sheets if you use them. Bake the puffs in a 400-degree oven for 15 minutes. After that time, reduce the oven temperature to 350 degrees and bake for 20 minutes more, or until the puffs are puffed, golden brown, and very firm to the touch. You can pick one up and tap on its bottom. The puff should feel light and hollow. Transfer the puffs to a cooling rack. Use a pointy knife or a skewer to poke a hole under the puffs so they dry out completely. Let cool to room temperature. You can fill the cream puffs using 2 different methods. The first one is to fill the puffs by inserting the tip of a pastry bag through the hole you created at the bottom of the puff. And this method works better with fillings such as crème pâtissière because it's a looser kind of filling that benefits from being contained in the puff. The second one is to saw off the top of the puffs, fill them in, and then place the top part back onto the puff. The second method works better with a whipped filling such as crème chantilly because you can overfill the puffs to create a spectacular presentation. A classic way to finish up whole puffs is to dip them into a chocolate glaze. You'll find a recipe to make this dark chocolate ganache glaze and other variations in the project section of the class. To make my puffs even prettier, I like to sprinkle chopped nuts or edible glitter over the puffs. Make sure to do so while the glaze isn't set so the garnishes stick to the puffs. Let rest until the glaze is set. To finish sawed-off puffs, simply sift some powdered sugar over the tops. You can also drizzle some chocolate glaze over for an extra special finish. Once filled, the puffs should be enjoyed within a few hours. Now let's make chouquettes. Chouquettes are a somewhat lesser known creation, but they're definitely worth your attention. They're the simplest treat, just baked puffs sprinkled with pearl sugar. While they look similar to cream puffs, chouquettes are not filled. They're a light and airy treat that highlights what makes pâte à choux so delightful. I personally just love to have them as breakfast or with coffee as a mid-morning snack. They're also great to bring as a hostess gift if you're invited to brunch. The tricky thing with making chouquettes is to find the specific pearl sugar that is used to sprinkle the chouquettes. It's not just regular coarse sugar. It's a sugar that is turned into small grains that are polished to a pearl-like finish. Pearl sugar is often used to make traditional Belgian waffles. When added to the dough, it caramelizes during the cooking process and creates delicious pockets of crunchy sweetness. Pearl sugar is also what makes the chouquette's signature crunch. If you want to make chouquettes, you really need to find pearl sugar. You can buy it in specialty baking stores and online. I've included resources in the project section of the class. When making chouquettes, I like to use a star tip because it creates little nooks and crannies where the pearl sugar can nest. You can also use a plain round tip or an ice cream scoop. Cover a baking sheet with parchment paper and slip templates under if you want to use them as a guide. Pipe out mounds of dough about the size of a ping pong ball. Chouquettes allow for some creativity. You can let their pointy tip up or flatten it as you prefer. Space each puff about 3 inches apart. If you want rounder chouquettes, use damp fingertips to press down peaks of dough that are sticking out. Brush each chouquette with egg wash, that is 1 egg yolk mixed with 1 tablespoon of milk. Then generously sprinkle each chouquette with pearl sugar. Make sure there is sugar sticking to the top and sides of each chouquette. Bake the chouquette in a 400° Fahrenheit oven for 15 minutes. Then reduce the oven temperature to 350 degrees and bake for 15 minutes more or until the chouquettes are puffed and golden brown. Contrary to cream puffs, you do not want chouquettes to be completely dry and crisp. They're at their best when they remain a bit pillowy and moist. Transfer the chouquettes to a cooling rack and let cool completely. Chouquettes are best eaten the day they're made. Once cool, you can also freeze them in an airtight container. When ready to enjoy, defrost at room temperature for 15 to 30 minutes, then warm back into a 350 degrees oven for about 5 to 10 minutes to return them to their crisp and freshly baked quality again. Now let's make éclairs. Éclairs are basically cream puffs in a different shape. Just like cream puffs, you can fill them with different flavors of crème pâtissière or with whipped cream, jams, fresh fruits, and so on. To form éclairs, you will need to use a pastry bag fitted with a star or a round tip with a half-inch opening. Using a star tip creates a rib pattern on top of the éclairs, whereas a round pastry tip creates an éclair with a perfectly smooth top. Let's get started. Line large baking sheets with parchment paper. If using, slide templates under the parchment paper for guidance. You can make short or long éclairs. The choice is yours. You'll find printable templates in the project section of the class. Use masking or painter's tape to secure the sides of the parchment paper to the baking sheet so it doesn't move when you pipe the dough. Hold the bag with the tip at a 45-degree angle. With the tip of the bag touching the sheet or barely hovering over the sheet, squeeze gently and evenly with one hand while guiding the tip of the bag with the other. Use gentle pressure to form a shape no wider than the width of the tip to create cylinder éclairs, or use greater pressure and move the bag more slowly for thicker éclairs. Pipe out 2.5-inch long logs for short éclairs or 5-inch long logs for long éclairs. To stop piping, release pressure from the bag, then push the tip down and quickly jerk it upward. Because the dough is very sticky, it can be helpful to use a damp finger to cut off the dough at the end of each éclair. Pipe all lugs spaced 2 inches apart to allow for expansion. If you don't have a star-shaped pastry tip but want to create ribbed éclairs, you can gently run a small fork along each éclair to create a similar look. Bake éclairs for 15 minutes in a 400-degree oven. Reduce the oven temperature to 350 degrees and bake until puffed, golden brown and very firm to the touch, about 10 minutes more for short éclairs or 20 minutes more for long éclairs. Just like cream puffs, you can fill éclairs using 2 different methods. The first one is to fill the éclairs by inserting the tip of a pastry bag through the holes you created at the bottom of each éclair. You'll probably need to create 1 hole for short éclairs and 2 to 3 for long éclairs. This method works better with crème pâtissière because it's a looser filling that benefits from being contained in the éclairs. It creates traditional slender éclairs that are easy to dip into a glaze as a finishing touch. The second option is to saw off the top of the éclairs, fill them in, and place the top part back onto the filling. This method works better with a whipped filling such as crème chantilly, and it is also necessary when you want to finish the éclairs with fresh fruits, jellies, or other creative fillings. A classic way to finish up éclairs is to dip them into a chocolate glaze. You'll find a recipe to make this dark chocolate ganache glaze and other variations in the project section of the class. Carefully take 1 éclair and turn it upside down. Dip the top of the éclair into the glaze. Turn the éclair back onto a clean baking sheet or serving plate to set. I like to finish éclairs with creative toppings. I find they make them even prettier and more spectacular. Some of my favorite toppings include chopped nuts, shaved chocolate, fresh fruit, and edible glitter. When it comes to flavor combinations, sky is really the limit. In the class notes, you'll find lots of recipes and inspiration to get you started. Now let's jump over to the savory side and make my favorite cheesy puff, Gougères. I have to admit that I've long been addicted to Gougères. I can eat through a whole bowl of those treats faster than chips or popcorn. These cheesy, savory, choux-like confections are light as air, with a slight crunch on the outside and a moist, tender interior. They're like the posh version of cheese puffs, and they taste better than your favorite cheese crackers. They're the perfect finger food guaranteed to wow guests on special occasions. My favorite way of enjoying Gougères is fresh out of the oven, but you can also fill them with savory mousses. Today, I'll be demonstrating how to make Gougères and show you how to fill them with an easy smoked salmon mousse. Once you've made your basic pâte à choux, remove the bowl from the electric mixer and, using a spatula, fold in the grated cheese and flavorings of your choice. You'll find lots of flavor combination ideas in the project section of the class notes. Because of the grated cheese, it's much easier to shape Gougères using a small ice cream scoop than a pastry bag. Simply fill the scoop scant with Gougères dough, then set the mounds 3 inches apart over a parchment paper covered baking sheet. Place 1 baking sheet on the oven's top rack and the other on the bottom rack. Bake the Gougères for about 30 minutes, switching the position of the baking sheets halfway through baking. The Gougères are done when they are puffed, golden brown, and firm. Just like Chouquettes, you should aim for a slightly eggy and moist interior as opposed to a fully dry and set Gougère. If you're not sure if the Gougères are done, pry one open with a sharp knife to check for doneness. Serve the Gougères hot or warm. To fill savory puffs, saw off the top of the puffs, then pipe the filling in. You'll find a recipe to make this simple smoked salmon mousse in the project section of the class. Once the puffs are filled, replace the caps. You can make the puffs even more festive by decorating the tiny caps with more garnishes. Once filled, the puffs should be enjoyed within a few hours. It's time for you to get to work! Once you get started working with pâte à choux, I bet there won't be any stopping you. Using the skills you learned in this class, you could soon be making more spectacular desserts such as Paris-Brest, Religieuses, and Saint-Honoré's. The pinnacle of pâte à choux achievement has to be the croque-en-bouche. If any of you ever make one, please make sure to let us know so we can all cheer along your baking success. But no need to make a spectacular croque-en-bouche to enjoy the versatility of pâte à choux. I hope my class will inspire you to create your own puff treats. You'll find the links to all the recipes I've made in this class, as well as many more bonus recipes and variations in the project section of the class. Let's get your choux game started. Make sure to come back to this class to share photos of your creations through the community page. If you like the class, make sure to review it and share it so more people can discover it. I can't wait to see what you'll pipe up.